Live, local, now. This is WSFA 12 News, Today in Alabama.
Good Sunday morning. I'm Jordyn Elston. This morning's top stories are just seconds away, but first, WSFA First Alert meteorologist Lee Southwick is tracking your Sunday forecast. Good morning, Lee.
Good morning, Jordyn.
We start this morning with an update on Auburn police officer Justin Sanders, a 5-year veteran on the force who was shot in a wild sequence of events Friday night. Federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies all came together to track down Sanders' attacker, 38-year-old Christopher James Wallace, after he robbed a pharmacy and led police on a manhunt. Wallace, who was with an unknown woman at the time, got into a shootout with police at an apartment complex off of Wire Road. No one was injured in that shooting, but both suspects died in a sudden fire that erupted from the building they were in. We spoke to a local resident of the apartment complex, and she says that Friday was by far the scariest night of her life.
I heard multiple rounds being fired and heard police yelling, "Get on the ground, come out," all different sorts of things. So I ran to my bathroom and sat in my bathroom tub. And then they came and knocked on my door. I was like, oh my gosh, because I heard all the gunshots, multiple rounds, so scared, and did not know that there was a fire going on until I opened the door and saw flames, and I had 3 SWAT agents in front of me. Once I was behind the van, I asked if I could just go to my best friend's house, and I took off. I had no shoes on, barefooted, pouring down rain, ran to her house.
Officer Sanders is at UAB Hospital and is in stable condition. The cause of the fire, as well as the death of Wallace and the woman that was with him, are both still under investigation by the State Bureau of Investigation and the State Medical Examiner's Office. Happening now, Alabama law enforcement officials are conducting a statewide manhunt for a man who was wanted in connection to the death of a Sampson woman. The State Bureau of Investigation Lieutenant Heath Carpenter says 45-year-old James Chadwick Green Sampson fled the scene of a fatal shooting, and his current location is unknown. He was last seen driving a red 2017 Toyota truck with an Alabama license plate that reads Chad 1. He is believed to be armed and dangerous. If you know where he is, contact police. We're learning more about the victims of that workplace shooting in Illinois on Friday that left 5 people dead and several others injured. And now police revealed the shooter, Gary Martin, should have never been allowed to own a gun. NBC's Chris Pallone has the latest.
Many questions remain after the country's latest workplace massacre. This one happened in Aurora, Illinois.
Attention, all police. Aurora does have an active shooter.
5 people shot to death Friday at a manufacturing plant that makes plumbing valves. Police said Saturday the shooter, Gary Martin, never should have had a gun to begin with.
But absolutely, he was not supposed to be in possession of a firearm.
Investigators say Martin started shooting in a meeting in which he was being fired after 15 years on the job. 5 years ago, state police ordered him to turn in his gun when they discovered Martin was a convicted felon. The same .40 caliber Smith & Wesson he used Friday.
After a FOID card revocation, the subject is provided a letter stating that they need to relinquish their firearms, and we're looking into why that did not happen.
Outside the Henry Pratt Company plant, friends and coworkers are remembering the dead. Police identified them as Human Resources Manager Clayton Parks, intern Trevor Wayner, mold operator Russell Byer, plant manager Josh Pinkard, and stockroom attendant Vicente Juarez.
Your words can't even describe how good of a dad he was. He was a great dad.
5 police officers shot during a gunfight with Martin are all expected to survive.
And I also want to point out that we're thinking about the victims of these families, the families of the victims. That is also foremost in our thoughts. And as you know, we're trying to take care of each other.
Police shot and killed Martin after his rampage, meaning some answers about what caused him to do this might never be known. Chris Pallone, NBC News.
Police said Gary Martin had been arrested at least a half-dozen times since his felony conviction in the 90s. His latest arrest was in 2017 for disorderly conduct and criminal damage to property. Police in Clinton, Mississippi confirm multiple fatalities in a standoff that lasted nearly 12 hours. Authorities say 4 people are dead. Police in Clinton say the standoff began with reports of shooting overnight. 2 children were brought safely out of the home during the standoff. Authorities say a suspect is in custody. Investigators continue to work through the night, processing the scene inside the house on Fox Hills.
It is with a saddened heart that I report that there were multiple fatalities within that residence and that the scene is now secure.
Nothing like this has ever happened before that I'm aware of in the city.
Police have confirmed that the situation stemmed from a domestic dispute. Yesterday, a vigil was held for those who have fallen victim to hate crimes because of their sexual orientation. The vigil for victims of hate and violence has been held for 20 years after the death of Billy Jack Gaither, a gay man who was beaten to death in 1999. The purpose of the vigil is to remind the community that Alabama's hate crime law does not account for hate crimes against sexual orientation or gender identity. And many people at the vigil say they hope some changes will soon be made.
Number one, let's change legislation to include us in the hate crime laws. That's number one. Number two, let us have legislation that is not going after us like we're criminals for being who we are. And we also need the faith-based groups to start being more loving and accepting of people. That would go a long ways to changing things in our society.
Since Alabama's hate crime law does not count crimes against people for their sexual orientation, there really is no way of knowing just how many attacks are carried out against members of Alabama's LGBTQ community. New this morning, the American Legion is reaching out to widows of veterans. Saturday, they held their 3rd annual Widows Luncheon. Members say it's part of their duties to serve not only veterans, but their entire families. And this is a way to care for the families of veterans even after they have passed on.
They need to know that somebody cares for them, because you know, at a funeral everybody is there, but what about 6 months down the road when they're looking at a picture of their loved ones, just that phone call just to say, I'm checking on you, how you doing? And that's what it's all about, to show our love and respect for our widows.
The American Legion is the country's oldest veteran service organization. As our Sunday morning gets underway, you might want to take note of some incoming rain today as we get ready for the work week. WSFA First Alert meteorologist Lee Southwick is tracking it all for us in her exclusive First Alert forecast coming up next. Well, I'm glad to see that we're going to have kind of some warmer weather, but I'm a little disappointed about the rain.
I know. We just have to keep our umbrellas on hand. We'll have a quick break on Monday, so get outside and enjoy it Monday afternoon, and then definitely going to need that raincoat over the next 7 days after that.
All right. Thanks, Lee. A whole lot of high school and college basketball is coming up after the break, including Alabama taking on Vanderbilt at home in a game that has implications on the Tide's postseason hopes. And both the boys and girls teams for Pike Road High School seeing some more playoff action last night. Highlights from those games and more coming up next. E-cigarettes, vaping, whatever you want to call it, you've seen them. Millions of people say they've tried them. And just like other smoking habits, there are hidden dangers that come along with it. Meredith Wood has more in today's Health Watch. In other health headlines, bad news. We are not done with the flu season. The CDC reports flu activity is now widespread in 48 states, in addition to Puerto Rico. The highest rate of hospitalizations was for people aged 65 and older. But there is still time to get the flu shot if you have yet to get it. The CDC announced Thursday that it has been about 47% effective so far this season, which is better than last year. We'll take a short break and be right with you to take another look at that forecast coming up next.